We have a long, sad story today. And the story is the one of Yehuda and his tremendous descent. And eventually, but it has a good ending. And the ending is that the Moshiach, strangely enough, here we go. Ready? We'll have to do it a little bit quickly today. Ready? So what happened? The brothers just finished selling Yosef into slavery. They didn't know they sold him into slavery. They just got rid of him. They sold him to the Ishmaelim, and the Ishmaelim sold him to the Midyanim, and the Midyanim sold him into Egypt, into the house of Potiphar. So all of a sudden there's this interruption with this whole weird story about Yehuda. And the story about Yehuda is that basically he goes and gets married to this lady, the daughter of Shua, and that's her name is called Bat Shua. She gives birth to 3 sons. One of the sons gets married to a lady called Tamar, and he dies because of a sin. We'll talk about what it is. So he says to the second son, you take her. You'll marry her, and the children will be on your brother's name. And he also dies. He does the same sin. And that's it. Yehuda says, enough. I'm not going to give her to my third son. And he keeps making excuses. And she, meanwhile, realizes that she's not going to give birth to any children. She's stuck. So she hears that Yehuda is going to, whatever is, observe his sheep or shear his sheep. And she intercepts him. She disguises herself as a prostitute. And Yehuda falls for it. And he has relations with her. And she becomes pregnant. And Yehuda says, what are you giving? How'd you get pregnant? I mean, you're married. You were married to my son. You're my son's widow. How'd you do that? Have her burned. Why have her burned? It's a big question why he came up with that punishment. But anyway, so she said she brought proof that the child was really his. She was pregnant from him. And he realized his tragic mistake. And she gives birth to 2 children. One of those children is Peretz. And Peretz eventually becomes the David HaMelech. King David is called Hapartzi. King David comes from this Peretz, and of course that's going to be the Moshiach. So Moshiach is coming from these weird sources. One of them is from one of the sons of Lot. I'm sorry, of Lavan. I'm sorry. No, Lot. That Lot, that he has relations with one of his daughters and gives birth to Moab. And now we have this weird story. So Mashiach comes from these weird relationships. So let's go. Let's do this one. Here we go. And it was at that time. What time? The time when they sold Yosef into slavery. And so all of a sudden, Vayered Yehuda me'Esachav, Yehuda descended from his brothers, and he went to a friend of his, Ish Adulami, and his name was Chira. That was his friend Chira. And so he says, Rashi says, why is this inserted over here? Why not just tell that Yosef went down to Egypt? And then we'll see right after this whole story, which is a pretty long story, we'll see it today. After this long story it returns us back to what happens to Yosef. Yosef goes in the house of Potiphar, and Potiphar's wife has lust for Yosef, and she tries to entice him. Yosef runs away, and she makes up the story that he tried to rape her, and that Yosef gets thrown into prison. This is a pretty, sinister Torah portion. And he gets thrown into prison, and that's where it ends. He gets thrown into prison, and there's these 2 ministers that have dreams, and Yosef interprets the dreams, and that's it. That's going to be after this. So between the stream of things that Yosef is sold into Egypt, and then, next chapter is what happens to him when he's in Egypt. All of a sudden is inserted this weird story about Yehuda. So why? Says Rashi, why is this whole story about Yehuda having relations with Tamar, she's really his daughter-in-law, and he thinks she's a prostitute? What happened? Why does this story stuck in there? To tell you that Yosef, that because of what Yehuda did, as he was brought down from his greatness, and also when he saw how pained his father was, his brother said, "You were the ones that told us to sell him. If you would have told us to bring him back, we would have listened to you." So therefore, he went away from his brothers and to a friend of his, Ish Adulami called Hira. And Yehuda, okay, so it's Yehuda. So now Yehuda leaves his brothers. He goes to this fellow called Hira, and he sees there a lady, Ish Kanani, the daughter of a Kanani man. So Rashi says it's Kanani Tagra, like we're learning in Chassidus in the morning, a businessman, because Siftei Chachamim explains that his mother warned him very carefully not to take any wives from the Kanani. The Kanani people are, how do you say, perverted. In fact, there's a special commandment, even we read it in Mincha, prayer of Yom Rosh Hashanah, of Yom Kippur, and it says over there, don't do like the deeds of the Egyptians and the Canaanim. And it says that those were the most decadent people in the world. They were the most perverted people in the world, the Egyptians and the Canaanites. So that's why he says that he took from a tagra, a salesman. Okay, there's a lot of explanations, but this is sort of long, so we can't take too long. Anyway, so he finds this lady, Bat Shoah. He marries her, and of course he converts her first. And the same thing with Abraham and Sarah. And so she got pregnant and she gave birth to a son, and she called the son Er. Now the word Er also means a curse. He called him Er also means to arouse his power. This is Ramban. But the next two children, he's going to have three children. The next two, his wife gave them these names. And they're sort of like not nice names. We'll see. Patar Od, and he gave this Bat Shoah, she got pregnant again from Yehuda. And she gave birth to a son, Vatikra, and she called his name, in other words, the wife, calls his name Onan. Onan. And she had another child, and she called his name Sheila. And they were in this place called Kaziv when she gave birth to them. Kaziv is the name of a person. He says, I say that because she stopped giving birth, so it's called Kaziv. Kaziv also means it's not something that stops, appears to be permanent, but then it stops. It's called Kaziv. Like Achzava, you say disappointment. He says that's what Kaziv means, that he stopped. Okay, so the name is, so we have the three sons, right? Er, Onan, and Sheila. So Yehuda took a wife for this son, the first son called Er, the oldest son. And the lady's name was Tamar. And she also converted, right? So Er, the firstborn of Yehuda, it was bad in the eyes of God. And God killed him. It says, what did he do? That he did birth control. He spilled his seed outside. He didn't want her to get pregnant because she says that she would get pregnant and she wouldn't look so beautiful anymore. He didn't want her to be, right? He wanted to have a beautiful wife. He didn't want to have a wife that was all bulging out and things like that. So therefore he used birth control and God killed him. In those days, it was a little bit different than now. Oh. As we see. Yeah. We see also the word Er is the same letters as Ra, but it's backwards. Yehuda then went to a second son and said, listen, your brother just died. I don't know exactly what happened over there, but you marry this lady, Tamar. She's really beautiful, huh? And it says Yabim, that she should be a yum. Yabim means to take your dead brother's wife if she doesn't have any children. And then you'll have children, and the children will be called like in honor of your brother. They'll be called on the name of the dead brother. Well, Onan saw that the children wouldn't be his, actually 100%. So he did the same thing as his brother did. But here it says explicitly that he spilled his seed outside on the ground, it said, so that his brother wouldn't have children on his brother's name. And why should I waste my energy and all the children are going to be called in my brother's name? Pretty stupid thing to do. In any case, the result was the same thing as his brother. It was bad in the eyes of God, and he also killed him also. Yehuda now says to Tamar, this lady, Kalaso, his daughter-in-law, you know what? Maybe sit in my house until Shayla gets older. He's young, and then because he really said to himself, maybe my third son is going to die just like his brothers did. And so that's what Tamar did. She went and she sat in the house of her father and waited. She wanted to be there so her father would be sure that she didn't become promiscuous out in the streets or something like that. So she was in a place that was guarded and etc. Says the Rashi, he was really just making excuses, because the fact of the matter is he didn't want her to get married to the third son. He thought that she was killing him. She didn't know that Yehuda didn't know that his sons were doing bad. He didn't know that his sons were doing something wrong. He thought that some sort of a curse was with them. Maybe she was, who knows what. She was muchzekasi, shiamutu anasheh, that she already had what's called a chazaka, that it was you could suppose 2 husbands died in a row. It was not just suspicious, it was very probable that the third one would die. Anyway, don't take any chances. Better safe than sorry. There came a long time, the days passed, and Yehuda's wife, Bat Shoah, she died also. And Yehuda was comforted. And how? He went to his friend Chira, that's how the whole thing began, to the Chira, the Adulami, and he went up there to shear his sheep. He said he went up to look over the shearers, to observe the shepherds shearing the sheep. That's what Rashi says. So Tamar said, it was told to Tamar, now she's sitting in the house of Yehuda, just sort of, what do you say, wasting away. And she was told, your father-in-law is going to this place called Timnah to shear his sheep. It says Timnah, where was Timnah? Timnah was on the side of a mountain, says Rashi. And it says that Samson went down to Timnah, and that he went up to Timnah. Okay, in any case, Tamar removed her garments of mourning. I don't know, maybe she was dressed in black or whatever, and she covered herself up with a face covering, and she intercepted Yehuda. She got there before him, and she sat on the crossroads to Timnah, and she saw that Shelah, the older son, why? Because she saw that this remaining son of Yehuda was still alive, and Yehuda wasn't giving it to her. Wasn't giving. Rashi says she covered her face so that she wouldn't be recognized, and she sat. It says in the middle of the road, so that everyone would see her. It says what is like the opening of Avram Avinu, that everybody was expecting to see her. looking to see her, because she saw, therefore she said, he's not getting married. Shayla is getting, it was old. Yehuda doesn't want me to get married at all. And she wanted to have children. She wanted to have children from tribes. She realized how holy Yehuda was. It says, Bepetach enayim asher. Take these letters. This is the last letters of Reish Mem Chet. That's Ramach. 248 positive commandments. And that also is the gematria of Avraham. Same gematria. The Bala Turim is really a genius at this. She wanted to have children and be connected to the tribe of Abraham. Yehuda was okay. So Yehuda saw her and he thought that she was a prostitute because she covered over her face. What does it mean? He couldn't see and recognize her. There's a midrash that say she covers her face. When she was in the house of Yehuda, she would cover her face. She was very, very modest. Therefore, he never thought that this was her. In other words, when she was sitting on the looking like a prostitute, she didn't cover her face. She did not cover her face. But when Yehuda saw her walking, he thought, this can't be my daughter-in-law, because when she was in my house, she was very, very modest. She always covered over her face. This can't be her. In any case, Yehuda said, I will have relations with you. He didn't know that it was his daughter-in-law. And she said, what are you going to give me? You have to pay. A prostitute, she wants money. Right? So he said, I promise I'll send you a goat from my sheep, my flock. And she said, okay, that's okay, but I want some sort of a surety, some sort of a collateral that you're going to pay. Give me some sort of a collateral, something that you've got, because you'll just leave and you'll never come back. Who knows who you are? Give me some sort of a collateral and I'll come in. So he said, okay. He said, what do you want? I'll give it to you. And she said, I want your seal. Your seal. Rashi says it was like a ring that he had, a seal, and your patil means a garment that you have on you, and also your staff that's in your hand. And he gave it to her, and he had relations with her, and she became pregnant, because that wasn't his business. What is this? Stephen Lack, you're making marks all over the, huh? Why would you do a thing like that? Okay, let's see. Maybe I'm doing it. 1 minute.
It was me. It was by accident. I don't know how to get rid of them.
Wait a second. I think I do. 1 minute. Here, I got my eraser. Here we go. Watch this. There it is. The special thing, which is made just for people like you. There we go. Oh, oh, you're doing it again. All right.
Again.
Don't worry about it. Here we go.
Okay.
Come every day. You can make as many marks as you want. Just come. Okay. So she stood up. She removed her covering from her face, and she put on garments of returned her garments of widowhood. Okay, now the obvious question is, 1 second, how does she know she became pregnant? It says she became pregnant. It says Vatar lo giburim kiyotzebo. Tzadikim, she got pregnant And it was eventually when she become pregnant, lo to him. What do you mean to him? She just says she got pregnant. Says she got pregnant with children that were going to be powerful and holy like she was, like Yehuda was. Yehuda was. Now some people say that these three things that he said, the seal, the KliYkar says, the seal that's God's name. God's name. Seal is emes. The patila, that's like tzitzit. Patil techelet. That's like the tzitzit. That's God's presence coming into the world. And the staff is the staff. That's a staff of rulership. And sure enough, this is going to be what's going to be given to her. She's going to give birth to parrots, and parrots is eventually going to give birth to David, and David is the forerunner of Moshiach. I mean, Rambam says he was the first Moshiach. Oh, let's not jump the gun. Here we go. So now she puts back her garments of mourning and runs back home, and she's there when Yehuda returns. Right? She's now his daughter-in-law, and she's just pining away over there. So Yehuda gets to his friend, and he sends her a goat from the friend, the Adulami, and he said, "Go and get my ring back, and my seal, and my garment, and my staff. Get it back." So this his friend Hira, he goes and looks for her, and he asks the people, "Did you see a prostitute sitting on the corner?" They said, "We don't know what you're talking about." So he came back to Yehuda and said, "I couldn't find her." And also the people of the place, they said they don't know anything about a prostitute, right? Sitting on the crossroads, we never saw a thing like that. As Yehuda said, "Vayom Yehuda tikach lo pen niyeh lebuz." Yehuda said, "Listen, you got to get these things back because it's going to be a disgrace to me. I sent this goat and you didn't find her. What's gonna be?" He said, Rashi says, Rashi said, let her have what she's got, right? Because if you go back more, it'll be advertised and it won't be nice. Everybody's going to say, what's this guy looking around for a prostitute to pay her? Whose goat is this? And eventually it's going to be figured out that it is. Because Yehuda tricked his father also with a goat. Remember, he took the garment of Yosef and dipped it into the goat's blood that he put into the blood of Yosef. So therefore, now she also tricked him with the same thing with the goat. Any case, three months later, just one second here. Hello. Here we go. 3 months later. Now Yehuda forgot about this whole thing about the prostitute with the staff and the ring and this and the goat. Forgot about the whole thing. He calmed down, went back home now, and his wife is dead. The 2 sons are dead. He goes back home. He's got his last son is over there. His son has already gotten big. Tamar is also living somewhere in the house. And suddenly it's told him that Tamar, she was prostitute, whatever, she became licentious. She must have had relations with somebody. It's your daughter-in-law, right? She's not allowed to get married to anybody else. Well, bad news, she's pregnant. And Yehuda said, take her out and let her be burnt. Why burnt? It says, Omer Ephraim, Mashka'a, no, it says, Bito Ephraim Mishka'a. Anyway, he said, she was the daughter of Shem. Right? There was Shem, Cham, V'Yafes, right? So she was the daughter of Shem, this Tamar. And he was what's called a Kohen. And therefore, a daughter of a Kohen that gets this is her punishment is burning. Now, burning in Judaism doesn't mean they just tie her to the stake and burn her. It means that they pour molten lead down her throat. However it is, very not pleasant. So he says, have her burned. So she's brought out, and he mitzeis, she is taken out to be burnt. But she sent a message to Yehuda, her father-in-law, and said, listen, you can burn me, no problem. You want to burn me, burn me. You're right, I did have relations with some man, right? The fact is I wasn't really married to anybody. You wouldn't let me have relations with your son. But I did have relations with a man. Which man? The person that these things belong to him. Right? Here, tell me, maybe you know whose ring and whose garment and whose staff this is. She didn't want to embarrass him. She didn't want to say in public, you're the one that got me pregnant. But she sent him these three things privately and said, recognize, if you know who it comes from and you want to admit, then admit. If not, then you can burn me. I don't want to shame you. From here it says it's better for a person to be thrown into a fiery furnace and not to shame someone else. Very strange story. So it says, please recognize who this is, right? Recognize who your creator is and don't let three people get killed. Who are the three people? Her. And she didn't know there were three sons. How did she know three people? She and her twins. She was pregnant with twins. But in fact, there were two, and somehow or other she knew. I don't know. So Yehuda realized, and she said, he tzadka mimeni. She is more righteous than I am, because the fact is that I did not give her to my son, Shelah, my remaining son, and velo yasaf od ladata, and he did not continue to have relations with her. One explanation. Another explanation is he didn't continue. Rashi says some people say he didn't stop, that he married her instead. He got married her. He got married to her. She was already pregnant from him. The rabbis say that there came out a voice from heaven and said, Mimeni. And he said, Mimeni, that God said, it's from me. This thing came from me, because she was very modest all the time in her life in the house of her father-in-law. So therefore, I have decided she will have, kings will come from her. The whole tribe of Judah, Yehuda, they were always going to be the kings. Lo yasur shevet mi Yehuda, it says. Moshiach is going to come from Yehuda. We'll see. And not only that, she did lo nasatia. He said she did properly, even though, because I didn't give her my third son. So it means that I was saying that the connection is finished. Therefore, he did not stop having, he married her himself. And it was when she gave birth, and behold, there are twins in her stomach. Twins. And one of them stuck out his hand from her womb, stuck out his hand outside. She says before she gave birth, she realized there was twins. Therefore, the what is it called? The midwife, the one who helped her give birth, she already had prepared a red string, so she'd see which one came out first. She was going to tie it around, because sometimes two children will be born and you forget they're identical. You don't remember which was first. So she had a red string to tie around the arm or the leg or whatever of the first one that came out, so that they would remember. So one of them stuck out his hand first, took his hand, And that one, and then afterwards, that this red string was tied, he brought it back. He pulled his hand back into the womb, and then his brother came out. And she said, look, you have broken through the boundaries. And they called his name Peretz. What do you mean, Peratsta? This is also the language of Ufratz, the Peretz. Chazakta alecha chozak, you overpowered your brother. Came out. And then va'achar yitzeachav, afterward came his brother, and his name, he came out Zerach. Right, so it says, yes, his brother came out Zerach. Okay, so a little bit, it says 4 times it's written Yud. Let's see how it was written Yud. It says, Yad, hand. Then it says Yado, another time, hand. Then it says another time Yado, right? And then it says Al Yado, 4 times it says Yad, hand. Why 4 times? 4 times says Rashi, it says Yad. This corresponds to the 4, and how do you say the 4 devoted things that Achan took from him. Achan, the story of Achan is when they conquered Jericho, is that Achan took 4 things from the city. They weren't supposed to take any spoils. Everything was supposed to be given to God. And he took the 4 things. That's one. Some people say this corresponds to the 4 things that Aderes Shinar, Peshtei Chatichot Kesef, Shel Matayim Shkalim, Lashon Zahav. This is the 4 things that Achan took. 1 second. That's the 4 things that he took from this place. That's the 4 times that it says Yad. Here is a little different explanation where it says the KliYkar. 4 times it says Yad, concurred the 4 Charim that Achan said, and it also is to that Achan, and he was punished by death, to show that because there came from him Achan eventually came out from him. Therefore, his kingship will not be successful because the king has to be righteous, and just. And if he goes after bribery, then he's not going to succeed. If the world has any effect on him, he's not going to succeed in being a king. Therefore, he took his hand back in order that he should not be the firstborn, and the Malucha shouldn't come out from him. And then afterwards came out Peretz, and Peretz would be the king, and he would be successful, and David would come from Peretz. So we see the unusual, weird story of Yehuda and how he gave birth to the progenitor of the Moshiach, Peretz, from this strange relationship that he had with his daughter-in-law that dressed herself up like a prostitute, and he wanted to kill her, and then she didn't want to shame him, and so he admitted himself, etc. As we'll learn more, God willing, tomorrow we'll go back to how Joseph was in the house of Potiphar, what happened, how he was put into prison. Today is Yutet Kislev, as we said in the morning. May God bless you all with a new year in the learning of Chassidut and in the practicing the customs and the ways and the attitude of Chassidut. And we should all dance together with Moshiach now.